All right, today we're going to be talking to a really interesting success story. Her name is Rachel. She's a member of the ERP Facebook group, and she's got quite the tale to tell. How are you doing, Rachel?
I am doing good. How are you?
Hanging in there. So let's go back to the beginning and relive some of this depressing stuff.
Oh, joyous. Okay.
Right. So yeah, take us to the beginning and talk us through sort of your unique situation because it has a really cool ending.
All right. So do you mean the beginning of the breakup, the beginning of the relationship?
Yeah, let's go through the breakup. Just let's get to the goods. Let's get right down to it.
All right. How much time do you have? Okay. So the beginning. So he is an ex-fiance of mine, and so I have to tell a little bit of the pre-breakup story for it
Okay,
to
yeah. Let's just give us like a quick crash course primer into him.
Yeah. Okay. So basically him and I met, fell in love super fast. And basically we got pregnant the first time, planned to get married, and we let that pregnancy happen. Okay. So we were all in, he was super excited. Unfortunately, I had a miscarriage. He was devastated. I, of course, was devastated. So that's a really hard thing for a relationship. And then
Right.
we're kind of, he ended up calling off the wedding. So
So did he do
obviously
this? He did this after the miscarriage?
he called off the wedding after the miscarriage. Yes.
Boy, it's like just rubbing salt into the wound, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Looking back, that was several years ago now. Looking back, we don't know why we made the choices we do sometimes. Like if I could talk to myself, I'd be like, why are you giving this guy the time of day? But sometimes you don't want your reality to be your reality. Right. So you'll do anything to not have that be your reality. And so that wasn't the end of the story for us. And that was also not what brought me to your program. We basically stayed quote unquote together, but not together, since now commitment was even scarier. And then towards the end of that year, we had been long distance too. So I had always told him I would never do more than a year long distance. And I don't like cold weather. So I wanted to move to a warmer place regardless. So I moved,
Yep.
knowing
Good
that
decision.
it was not,
Cold
yeah,
weather
yeah.
sucks. I hate cold weather too.
Agree. Even now I'm like, oh, this 50-degree winter is too cold.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You got to like move to
So,
Hawaii or something to get rid of those winters.
exactly. Just gonna keep going further south. So basically moved down here, knowing it wasn't like a surefire shot with this guy, but I also knew that I wanted to know, for better or for worse, to use that term, right? If this was not going to work, I wanted to be sure that I was going to let it go. And if it was going to work, I wanted to give it that shot. So that was the other part of my decision to move. It wasn't like, let's move together. I moved to the same area. We did get back together, and eventually I was like, why are we not engaged again? And again, still before I found ERP. And then eventually I was like, don't come back unless you have a ring. I'm done, for a variety of reasons.
Good. The ultimatum, typical.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was for, again, a variety of reasons. I didn't take up too much time on the backstory.
I gotta say, I'm with you so far here.
Yeah.
You moved. It's like you should do something.
Yeah, we weren't even living together. I mean, but so basically he was not a fan. No man is a fan of an ultimatum, right? Any woman that's considering it, highly recommend you do not do it, even if it's spur of the moment and not thought out. Like my case, don't say it if you're angry. You can't unsay it. I can see you nodding your head over there.
Yep,
like, yeah.
I'm nodding, just like yep, music to my ears.
So that was just before the holidays. And, typically, I've had a bunch of exes in the past, almost every single one I've gotten back. I am
Check
the person that has, I have like organically been the no contact rule person, because I was just like, no, if guy doesn't want me, well then screw him. Like I'm going to make him see what it's like to not have me around.
Very ungettable. Love it.
Yeah. And also I don't want to reach out and then be rejected. So it's ungettable, but it's also fear-based.
Okay.
So not entirely
Just
ungettable.
don't talk about that part.
Yeah. Okay. So basically go through the holidays, which typically, if exes are looking for an excuse to reach out, that's a big one where it's like, oh, Merry Christmas. Like, how have you been? Nothing, silence. And then mid-January, I hear from him and he wants to meet up. And we have like a 3-hour long conversation. And all of a sudden, like, he can't picture his life without me. And we can elope, because one of our arguments was I didn't want a big fancy wedding. I wanted to elope and we could go to the courthouse the next day and yada, yada, and all this stuff. And we got back together.
All right.
And that same night, despite precautions, our daughter was conceived.
Okay.
Now, here's the kicker.
Okay.
We're not done yet. It gets better. So we're supposedly back together, right? And then he doesn't talk to me for 3 or 4 days. Of course, I find out 2 weeks later I'm pregnant. And when I did talk to him, he was like, well, I don't think we should jump back into things. And I was like, what are you talking about?
You knocked me up, dude.
Well, he doesn't know that yet, because we found that out about a week later. But don't tell me you want to get married and all this stuff and then disappear off into the great wide world somewhere.
I'm mad for you. I'm literally mad for you.
Okay. We're still probably around 11 months away from the ERP breakup, right? So basically I get pregnant. It's a bumpy pregnancy. Here's one thing. He doesn't believe the baby is his because we were broken up for that time, right? In between when he came back.
Did he make you take a blood test or something?
Oh, wait until I tell you the day of the birth. Yes, you did after she was born.
It's so cringy,
There was no possible way that this was anybody else's baby. Like, I literally said to him, I was like, if it's not your baby, then Jesus has come again and you need to like
treat You're the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so yeah. We broke up like once or twice during the pregnancy, like obviously pregnancy hormones. I can't go out with him and have drinks anymore. I can't do a lot of the fun things because pregnant women can't do a lot of stuff if they want to take care of their child. So there was all types of reasons that we weren't getting along wonderfully. He also was not very supportive of the pregnancy. He traveled a lot for work at that point. So she comes along, and we're getting to the breakup, but to answer your question, she comes along, and 2 months after she's born, so we were not officially living together, but somewhat living together after she was born. One day, he basically says, I don't think this is going that well. I don't think we should live together. You need to move out. So me and our 2-month-old baby, I'm on maternity leave from work, and I'm like, well, I'm not staying 1,000 miles away from my family when the father of my child / ex-fiance tells me he doesn't think we can live together, but we can still hang out, which was his words that he doesn't remember saying. So I'm going to go back to my home state for the holidays, which he was then angry about. But then again, I don't think any woman is like, I really hope when I grow up, I am a single mom.
Yeah.
That's not generally how people
It's not the dream. Going. Exactly.
Yeah. And so it was at that point that I started looking for how to get things back together. And your program, that's not the first time in my life I've been like, Googling how to do whatever, like, do I text him first, all that stuff, right?
Right.
But it was the first time that I came across your program. And what I really liked about it was it applied different theories. It had elements of programs I had looked at and been in before, but it also had some stuff I hadn't done before. So that's about the time that I found you guys and jumped in. And then I also did coaching with Anna too.
Definitely helps. Anna's great, isn't she?
She is wonderful. And I will say, like, in our first call, like, she's hearing the story. And of course it's different when at that point, I think
she's probably like gathering the war, like the war party behind her to go like raid this guy's house or something for how he treated you.
She literally, like, she was very reserved, but she said to me, are you sure you want this guy back? Like, obviously trying not to be like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
but she's probably laughing if and when she listens to this and hears that. But
She probably
you know,
will.
she supported, yeah, she supported what I wanted and gave me the game plan, which wasn't very different than the game plan in your book. It was basically the same, except additional coaching on how to do
And a few
limited, no
extra
contact.
books, like recommended reading. She usually sends those really long homework things out with those books.
Oh, yeah, I was a bad student.
Oh, shame on you, Rachel.
I know. I was a bad student, but I mean, being a single mom working full time, like there's not a lot of time to read books or do
I hear you.
additional homework.
Yeah.
So
When you got the 2-month-old, 3-month-old screaming every day, you're running on 3-4 hours of sleep every night. Yeah, I get it.
yeah. So I was listening to the podcast version and reading, and I'd keep rereading, and then I had battle buddies from your group and stuff like that. So yeah, so ultimately what happened is I followed the program. Of course, I didn't do it perfectly. I think it's really hard to do that. I did lose EC, or emotional control, a time or 3 and have to restart. But he came back about 15 months later after the breakup.
So how old is your daughter at this point?
She would have been, no, she was 15 months old. So it must have been 17 months after the breakup.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking, wait, it was February. Yeah, so she must have been 14 months old or so.
You had moved back to your home state, correct? At that point?
I did not move back. I only went back there for maternity leave. And
Okay.
ended up.
So then he kind of came back to where he was.
Yeah, because one, cost of living was better. I could give her a life by myself. 2,
you want your family together.
I want my family together, but even if it didn't, I didn't want to be that stereotypical baby mama that everyone hates, who like, oh, she doesn't let me see my child, you know, like. Yeah. So yeah, for a variety of reasons, I did move back here. And how
often would you, like you mentioned throughout this process, you would lose emotional control? Would that happen when you would like he would like come around to see her?
So when I first was back here, it was very confusing because he was super nice to me. He would be like, let's do family dinners on Sundays and like all this stuff that literally felt like a family.
It sounds like a fearful avoidant to me.
Yeah, that's what the coach said too. And so, you know, I'd hold back as much as I could. And then I'd be like, well, what's going on? Why can't we like try this? Why can't we be a family? So probably my mistake there was just not holding back enough to force it out of him.
Yeah.
but there'd be, you know, so that was the loss of emotional control. I think there was one night that he had her that I allowed myself too much wine and decided nothing else was working. So I was going to call him and tell him how I felt, which is obviously exactly what you don't want to do.
Yep.
Surprise, that didn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So basically, you know, eventually I got to the point I couldn't do it 100% organically. I'll be very clear about that. I couldn't pretend like I didn't care, especially like the family aspect, seeing him weekly or more because we share a very young child.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know what was actually going on in the background at that time, which is there was another woman in the picture. Surprise, surprise, which he very carefully hid from me in every sense of the word. And
do you know how far back that went?
So
God, as we're opening up these horrible, it's like I'm ripping open scabs here or something. I mean, but I feel like it's important to touch on because that might create some insight into the breakup.
Yeah. So they had actually met in college. And
so it's his ex.
No, they didn't date in college.
Oh, all right. It's the one that got away.
Potentially, yeah. And so she was actually married. So at one point, him and I were talking about relocating together, and she was married and lived in that same state. And while I was pregnant, one day we were out and his Snapchat kept blowing up. And I was like, whose her name. I'm going to leave it out.
Right.
He was like, oh, that's my friend from college. She's married. She lives in the same state we're talking about moving to. And I was like, oh, that's so great. Like, we'll have friends when we go out there. Turns out
you're so kind. See, my wife would not be that way. She'd be like, why are you talking to someone who's married? And you're moving to the same state.
So it's not like
you're such a kind-hearted person, Rachel, is all I'm saying. There's glass half full
maybe
people.
I'm naive.
I don't think you're naive. I look at it like it is. In this case, it was a disadvantage, but in most cases, it's an advantage.
So I did ask him that question, and he was like, well, obviously things haven't been perfect with us during this pregnancy. And I was kind of asking her, because she's married, like, is it supposed to be this difficult, and getting her insight on that. And I was like, well, has she ever been pregnant? And he said no. And then I was like, well, then how would she know? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, you should be talking to me about this, not her. And I didn't want to open a whole can of worms, but to me, that's emotional cheating, and it leads to the destruction of relationships.
It's like a gateway drug. That's what it's like.
Yeah. And so they were at least talking when I was pregnant at some point, but he must have told a half truth in that she was actually getting separated, because that was when I was about 6 months pregnant. And when probably 2 months, come to find out much later, which we'll get to the success part, and then what I found out really happened. So probably about 2 months after him and I split up, they were suddenly dating.
He's got like this infant child. Oh my God.
And I'm like, I'm sorry. So
he basically broke up a marriage, is what you're saying.
So either he broke up a marriage, or she's a homewrecker and he broke up a marriage. So
let's just give them both some credit for that then. I think there's enough blame to go around for both of them.
Yeah. So, that's why I was a little nervous about this interview. So I was like, there's some feelings that might come out.
Yeah. Well, we'll just stay away from that then.
So, but I did not know about that through the entire thing until. So what happened is we were saying I lost emotional control a few times, and then I basically got to the point where I was like, this is not working. I have to completely let this go. Like, not even counting down days of no contact. I was not the type of person who wanted to start those text conversations to get them engaged. I tried it here and there, and he would always react positively, but I knew that he would. Like, that wouldn't have been a new thing for us. Like, we get along. So I was like, that's not going to make a difference. Like, we could be best buddies on text, and it's not going to make a difference, at least not in my situation. So I was like, I have to completely let this go. I have to really, really, like, not because Anna told me to, not because ERP tells me to, but I have to really, really focus on myself and like full force throw myself into doing all the things that ERP says, like find new like COVID related activities that I'm going to make my hobby and like do something that builds up my confidence. Now,
how long did it take you to get to that place?
I think I probably got to I forgot what the prescribed days is for that situation.
Well, no. So what I'm asking is like when the breakup happened and when you started trying to like get him back, how long did it take you before you had that mindset shift to where you're just like, you know what, I think I'm going to let him go?
It probably was early that summer. So I would say it was 4 or 5 months.
So it took a little while of you trying really hard to get him back and then just getting frustrated and being like, okay, I'm going to start focusing on myself. And I'm guessing that's when the real results started happening.
Yeah. So it wasn't that quick. So what I did is I like threw myself into like home improvement projects, like started playing with power tools. Like I was doing like badass stuff. Like,
right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like I have.
So you're like building like a baby's room or something, right? Stuff like that.
But I did do like architectural stuff in my house. Yeah. Like I was like,
that's big.
Like,
that's big.
I was like Chip and Joanna Jane.
Oh yeah. It, fixer upper. Yep.
Yep. So I did that. I started my own business in addition to working full time because I'm crazy, apparently, But yeah, basically I was like fully focusing on myself and getting back to myself. And I, as much as it like was puke worthy to myself, I did go back on online dating, even though that's not what I wanted in my heart. But I was
It's
like, I
funny.
at least,
It's really funny
yeah.
how often I hear that and how often that ends up being like that secret weapon for some reason. It's just uncanny. Like I did a success story interview yesterday with a woman and she just like half the time was talking about how exactly like you, she was like, I don't want to go online dating, but I did it. And then it just like created this like momentum with all these men that started liking her posts and everything. So I'm actually really curious to see how this plays out. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So I was like very, so as a single mom with no family in the area, it's not one of the challenges for me dating was that one, my daughter is so young and so cute, and I don't want to pay a sitter to go spend time with some random dude who might not be around. Right.
Right.
So I was very, very like life situation ungettable because anyone who wanted to spend time with me, I was very strict with the time that I would give them.
Mm.
So basically, the guy that I first went out with is actually my now husband, just so you know.
So the online dating thing kind of worked out for you then.
Yeah, it worked out. And I did go out with other people because I wasn't like the first guy that you go out with is not the guy, right? This is, I thought he was,
Except in your case. Except in
it
your
was.
case.
Yeah. So,
You probably really had to. He probably was like really wanting to work to see you.
oh my
Like it
gosh,
adds this really interesting element with the child, and it's kind of like, well, you can't just like leave her to go on a date, right? So
right. And
what
it's
does he
like,
have to do?
and her dad would cancel time that he was supposed to have with her. So we'd have a date set up and I'd be like, sorry, her dad canceled. I can't go. And he even asked me after we got married, how many times did you lie to me? I was like, actually none.
Yeah, the guy's
And,
just being a you know what.
yeah. And so I'd see him maybe like twice a month. And him and I ended up dating for about 6 months. In the meantime, of course, like I'm still talking to my battle buddies, who one of which I still talk to weekly. And she did get back with her. She has a son who's the same age as my daughter. She did get back. So she's like a current success story too. And they're
Is
living
that a
together.
cat?
And yeah, that's a cat.
Okay.
She wanted to
Just
come on
making
interview
sure I
it.
didn't hear things in the background there.
Yeah, no, she was trying to come over to the window and I pushed her away and she got mad. So,
Oh.
But so I still talk to her weekly. So definitely love the battle buddies part of this. And so where were we in the story? Okay, so
So basically, yeah, go ahead.
I had started super casually dating this guy, and I was very strict with him. I made it very clear. I was honest. I was like, look, I'm not like emotionally ready for anything. So this is going to be extremely slow if it's going to be anything. And if you're not okay with that, that's fine. Like, I didn't care, you know? And he rolled with it until for about 6 months. And in the meantime, I'm still like trying to entice my ERPX, right? And I guess the energy shift that we're kind of talking around that happens when you open up your energy to other men did attract him back, because basically what happened slowly over time is my daughter's father started suddenly bringing over dinners for us because he knew that I didn't have time to cook much. And that became more and more frequent. And then it became, do you want to come over for dinner? And then it became eventually him opening up. And then we got back together. So I did get my ERPX back.
Okay. No, she's going to drop here again. So let's get to it.
So at first it was like absolutely fabulous.
Honeymoon period. Yep.
Yeah. And so this is where I think there can be.
It does have to feel good to like get your family back,
Yeah.
But there's still a secret. There's still a sword of Damocles hanging over the head here. So
yeah, there was a lot. I think there was a lot of come to Jesus conversations that basically he had to have with me. And part of me thinks, looking back now, did he come back because he carried so much guilt that he was trying to allay that guilt from himself, and he didn't actually want to get back together? Because what happened over the next like 6, 8 weeks, however long it was we were back together, is he started to tell me about this other woman, about the fact that she relocated here, about the fact that she was living with him, which he never wanted to do to me. So that like was a gut punch. About the fact that she lived with him when our daughter was staying over there. Like, so all of these things, we're back together. I have what I've worked so hard for, right? And I was sitting in the moment, and thank God for all the emotional control training that I had through ERP, right? I became like a superstar of that. So like I'm all like gung-ho. Emotional control is the key to success in relationships if you are an emotional female. But I had the decision every time he was telling me this, like, I don't like hearing this. This sucks. I want to vomit, but it's in the past and I have what I want now. Do I let it go to potentially give my daughter and myself the type of life that I was fighting for so long? And at the time, my answer was yes, I'm letting all this go. And I think, this could probably be a debate psychologically, that he was not expecting me to forgive everything. Right?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
So yeah. And so I think part of him was like, she's going to find this out. She's not going to want to be with me. So maybe he was never all in. I don't know.
Oh, so you're like thinking like he had the conversation because he knew, which would be that's kind of a common fearful avoidant tactic of like being half in, half out. So you're thinking like he might have potentially had this conversation with you with these come to Jesus moments so that you would break up with him.
Either that, or he knew that if we were going to go forward, that he had to be truthful, but he didn't really believe that it would go forward. So
maybe it's a bit of both. Human beings are complicated,
Well, and it gets worse too, if you can imagine.
Oh, I can, unfortunately, but it makes me feel so bad for you. But you have the good ending, so that's sort of the light at the end of the tunnel.
So this is going to be literally the wild card of this entire conversation. Are you ready for this?
I'm okay. So, let me get ready. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, like sit back because this is going to be mind blowing. So, all right, so this is going to be the pinch hitter of the entire conversation. So basically, everything I went through. Obviously, I was not the no sex before marriage type, even though I do identify as Christian. Like I had a daughter out of wedlock. And I had always approached my adult life that way because, like most women, I'm a fan of sex too. But everything that happened with my daughter's father and I, like it hurt me so much emotionally, and also just my dreams for my life way before him, that I was like, it's not worth it. Like, as much as I love that one, there's some fantastic toys out there that do way better job. Two, like, if I'm going to give that part of myself to someone, I need to know that they're going to stick around. And I don't want to be attached to someone, especially now that I have a daughter, that isn't going to stick around. Like they need to be like ride or die if they're going to get that part of me. Right. So I basically had decided that for myself. And this was after her father and I broke up. So I did with him because obviously we already had a daughter. But with all of the other men that I had gone on dates with as a result of the online dating, like that was never a part of the equation.
Okay.
So, but the part where it gets worse. So first of all, keep that in mind.
Okay.
The part where it gets worse is, so when him and I were intimate again, I had not been intimate with anyone since before she was born. So at that point, that's like a year and a half or however long. That's a really long time. And nobody else besides him. And I find out because we hadn't like committed to each other at that time. But
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, other women had never been a thing. I find out that the very next night he was with the homewrecker.
So he told me you've technically been together, right? You like when you become intimate here, you're technically back together, right?
Well, we didn't verbalize that. So it was like,
so for you, it was just like this assumed thing where you were a little afraid to like approach that with him.
Not even, because we talked about it and I was like, this doesn't have to be a big deal. Like I said that I was like, it doesn't, because we both didn't want to rush back into it. We didn't want it to fizzle out, like be fast and then fizzle out. And I was like, well, honestly, I really want to do this because I hadn't been a while. And I was like, it doesn't have to mean that we're back together this second. But prior to us having a child together, we were together for several years. Other women had never been a thing, to my knowledge, I guess, at this point. Maybe they had, who knows? But so I didn't have that fear with him or that concern. So there was no way in my mind, I thought when I said that, well, he's going to go sleep with another woman the very next day. But he did. He got really drunk and it didn't mean anything, quote unquote.
Okay. And did he literally tell this to you?
He did. He did. He told me.
How long after that event with the other woman did he tell you?
So this is right. But that's actually what got us back together, because I said to him, I was like, look, that was a very big deal for me to sleep with you. I haven't been with anybody else. I was like, and to know that it's so casual to you, regardless if you were blackout drunk or not, right. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to trust you. Like, the fact that I was nowhere in your mind when this happened. Like, and he was like, well, in my mind, we weren't committed to each other
together. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So he offered commitment at that point, and that's when we got back together.
So you get back together.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually things don't go well.
So, oh boy. Okay. I guess I got to talk the true story, right?
It's almost like self-sabotaging. If I'm just looking at it from afar here, it's almost like self-sabotaging on purpose. Like your comment before about him telling you and being quote unquote honest here is also a little bit of like self-sabotage. So maybe some part of him didn't want to be tied down.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. So that's why one of the things we're looking back, I decided maybe it was all driven by guilt and him wanting to allay his own guilt, right?
I don't think fully. I think just looking at it, I think it's like a combination of both. I think guilt definitely plays in. It's like he's the bad guy. There's just no way you could slice it any other way. Like you leave a woman right as she's pregnant. She's a single mom. You are shacked up with this other, it's like there's however you slice it, it's not good. So
how do you that?
I don't really know. I mean, I'm sure in his mind there's a way that he tries to make himself the hero, but it does seem to me it's almost 100%. Like self-sabotage. Like he's doing this, like you mentioned, it didn't even enter your mind. It did. I think there's a clear indication he's trying to self-sabotage.
Yeah. And I called him out on that during the breakup that happened. So that happened. We got together, and then he's like one of those all in, full steam ahead people. And this is actually written about in my post, where he has plans and a timeline for when we're getting married, for when he's moving into my place. We're going to buy a house together and sell his house. And he has a whole timeline, like the months of the year that we're doing this. Okay. And to the point that he's sending me houses on Zillow and Redfin. We're actually touring houses together. Okay.
It's scary doing that. I've done that. It's scary. And I am not a super avoidant person, but it's scary. That's a huge commitment.
Yeah. And, I did get the advice from some people, he's running too fast to this. You need to pump the brakes. And I would try, can't we just have fun? And he'd be like, well, what's the problem? You don't want to do this? And I was like, no, I do. So I couldn't really pump the brakes no matter what I tried.
Poor thing.
And, so we end up planning it was my birthday. We planned a little family vacation, which we had never done before. And I thought we had a good time. Apparently he did not, but my mom also came, his family flew in. So it ended up being a huge family vacation. And then 2 weeks after that, I got the second COVID shot, was really sick one day. Didn't talk to him for most of the day because I was just laying in bed dead to the world.
Yep.
And he called me up and was like, we need to talk, real talk. It seems like you're not happy. I was like, what? And I'm
he's projecting at this point,
I was so confused. I was like, how do we go from like shopping for
As
houses
you're
to,
sick with the COVID thing.
yeah.
Uh,
So, and after that, it was like we quote unquote talked through whatever the issue was twice. And it was very weird, the things that were talked about. He was like, well, I feel like it's a lot of work when we're together now. And I'm kind of like, well, I didn't say this, but in my head, I'm like, well, no shit. Like, yeah, you can't go out every night and play pool. Like, like we have a year and a half year old daughter. Like,
well, it's the Peter Pan syndrome that Jordan Peterson often talks about, and how some men just resist growing up. And
I think that's exactly what happened. He did the cliche thing of finding someone younger who was still in that party stage who fit his lifestyle better. There's a quote there that's like, if a man gets a woman pregnant and she doesn't match his lifestyle any longer, he will find someone who does.
well, the irony is people like that end up dying with regrets, because eventually, the body's going to wither. All that's left is your mind, and he's not doing anything to cultivate his mind.
That was one thing, even when we were dating before ERP, therapy came up at one point, and Anna, that was actually a big thing in her plan. She was like, part of the plan was to get him into co-parenting therapy, not couples therapy, co-parenting. And he was immediately like, I don't think you want to co-parent therapy.
Right.
He's like, I think you want therapy for other reasons with me. So that was a hard no, but also he doesn't think anything's wrong with him. So he said to me, he's like, I will go to therapy in order to support you going to therapy. But, so I don't like to throw around the term narcissist. I think it's overused, but I really do think he might be one. So
I don't know. I'm no licensed therapist, but it does seem to me he's got some serious avoidant tendencies, and it does seem he really kind of doesn't want to take responsibility, and I can get that. It's really hard, especially when you're feeling really tied down. Like, it's super common for avoidant men to jump all in and then jump all out. And that's kind of what you're experiencing. So let's continue. This is like one of the most, it's like we're going down this crazy windy road in this
I've
situation.
been told that I should like sell this story to Lifetime.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. You got me on the edge of my seat.
So he like basically same thing as, so I didn't tell you this part earlier. So when I had gone back to my home state right after my daughter was born, or our daughter, I should say, I basically, like I said, instinctively was a no contact person. So I was doing that. And just like every other time, they crawl out of the woodwork and he wanted to talk and work things out. And at that point, he had been like, I just want more good days in bed with you. Maybe we can do a weekend away together as a couple. Like, he's a very sweet talker. He's very charming when he wants to be. He's successful at work. Like, that phenotype. So when I got back to the state that we live in my mind, we were going to pick up that conversation. But the weird part was that was no longer an option, and I had no clue why. And he would not tell me. He's like, it was too much for me. We're just done. It's not an open door anymore. I was like, literally last time we talked about working. Gotta be another woman. Yeah. And well, find out, fast forward a year plus later, it was. Oops. My phone, sorry.
That's all good.
But
Rachel got so mad about that, she threw her phone down, guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Really
good. so the reason I brought that up, the similarity was like, looks like it's going one way and sudden complete drop, no explanation that makes sense to me, right? Same thing happened with the breakup after I got him back because of the ERP approach. And I will say, I think this is really important for people that are trying to do the program. He actually said when we got back together, I was like, I said to him, why now? And he was like, I've noticed a lot of differences in you over the last few months. I was in this relationship that I wasn't happy with. And a lot of the things that I was concerned about with you don't seem to be there anymore. And the big thing was, because I had relocated, like I didn't have my own social network here. I was really dependent on him for interests and stuff like that, and friends at some point. And so the ERP, like throw myself into my own interests, really is basically, he was like, wow, like she's doing all these things. Like she is independent. Like she's, this whole thing. And I was always successful with work. Like I'm kick-ass. And actually, Anna said, because I'm in marketing, and she was like, the marketing and sales clients I have are usually the most successful ones because they understand strategy and go to market and all that stuff.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So basically, all of the things that ERP said would happen as a result of really reining it in and focusing on yourself, which I hate that phrase. I really do, because everyone's
it's cliche.
Like,
yeah,
but focus on yourself. I would get so mad. I'd be like, people would be like, well, just focus on yourself. And I was like, I don't have an effing choice but to focus on myself. Thanks for pointing that out.
It's all right.
So yeah, so I think that's important to say, as far as like what he said about why he did come back. And I think in my case, even though we didn't end up together, the ERP program did a few things for me. One, it really did help me get back to a fuller version of myself, because for me, post breakup, like I keep going with life. I might like melt into a puddle for a weekend and binge watch Netflix, but then I'm like, that's enough. Like I got shit to do. That doesn't mean there's no emotional pain. But then really pushing into the new interests and really being that independent person again, where you're not like checking in as a couple. It really built me up back into that full person again, and taught me, I think, to be more discerning. It also, like, building that confidence up also makes you less dependent on someone else approving of you. Mm-hmm. So it's being reminded of your own value, but you really have to believe that for yourself. And one of the things that was really interesting that I ended up learning kind of tangentially is you can have a really high self-concept in your work life and maybe your friend life, things like that, your family life. But what the relationship with my ERP ex did is it gave me a really low self-concept when it came to relationships, like romantic ones. So basically building up that self-esteem and self-concept with, I can do this, even if it's not a relationship thing, the belief that you can do things is incredibly important and bleeds into all areas of your life. So I really think that even though I was an ERP to get my ex back, which obviously I did, the ERP approach made me that ungettable person. That is what was.
So yeah, we were talking about your husband now.
Yeah.
It made so ERP. You were giving me complete credit for winning you a husband, which I will take.
Actually, I think, yeah, I mean, it's the combination of everything, right? But like, he even now says he was so impressed by everything I was doing. He asked himself, he knew initially he was actually intimidated by me. And I was kind of like, what is she capable of?
That's what you want. You want men to be intimidated by you.
Well, and this is a guy who has never had trouble with women, right? And so he says to me, and he's in sales, right? So it becomes part of your job to figure people out. He's like, I could not read. Like, he was like, and part of it is because I was so held back emotionally and like had all these boundaries up and was like ungettable, basically, right?
Right.
And so he had to pursue and pursue and pursue. And I'm fairly sure, actually, I know there was other women around, and I just didn't care because that's not where my heart was, right? And I also wasn't sleeping with him, so it didn't matter to me. So 6 months in, he wanted more. Like, he wanted.
Uh-oh. May have lost her for a little bit. And of course,
at the part where they say stand up and greet each other, I turn around and there he is with his girlfriend at the time. So that was awkward.
Okay.
But he said to me, and he said it on our wedding day, that was the moment he knew that I was the one for him. And he was like, what am I doing? Like, I need to be with her and not the person that I'm with. So basically he broke up with his girlfriend and started pursuing me again. And 3 months later, we were married.
I don't know if that's not a happy ending. I don't know what it is. You become like so intimidating to all other men and women that he's just like, I have to get that one. That's the goal. Yeah. I mean, Rachel posted like a picture of her ring and everything on the Facebook group, and was talking a little bit about how even though she did get her ex back, like she's talking about here, like ERP kind of like laid the foundation for giving her that mindset for getting a husband. And now, ironically, you have that optimistic dream that you wanted. It's just
literally have everything that I ever wanted. Like, he gives me way more than my ERP ex would have. He's generous. He's kind-hearted. He values me, probably because I learned to value myself. Like, this man, like, nothing's perfect, right? But this man, if you were good,
he's perfect for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he spoils me. You saw that in the ring.
I did.
Yeah, I just can't, not that I can't believe it, but the way that this story has unfolded and quote unquote the happy ending, like, and this is why I wrote in that post, like, absolutely, if you're in this program, on your core level, you have to believe that you can have and are deserving of the relationship that you want. And don't settle for less. And that's cliche too, to say don't settle. And I know that we get attached to our exes because we've invested so much in them.
You had a really good reason to get attached, though. I mean, there's a natural, like, you shared a child with him, and there's a natural, I think, feeling that you want your family whole. You don't want quote unquote like the broken family. But
I want to share my daughter at Christmas. You kidding me? That sucks. Like, who wants to pick up your kid at 2 p.m. on Christmas Day? Because that's the exchange time. Like, that's my reality now.
But sometimes that's what's best for you and the situation as a whole, and I think that's sort of maybe as initially took a little while for you to wrap your head around, but you seem to be doing great now with your iPhone 13 Pro Max and your awesome husband, and life's going good.
Yeah, we're building a house together. Like, it's good.
Oh, okay. So just throw that in there.
Yeah, we're going to Jamaica on Monday for honeymoon. I'm just going to keep adding to it. But the one thing that I really do want to say, and this was a driving factor with me, and then I do have to jump because I'm late for a work call, but is one thing that I really realized, and that really did change my approach too, in addition to everything else, was if you are in a situation where you do share a child with someone, as you were just talking about, it's a very strong factor to want to be back with someone. I want you to really, really think about the relationship that you would then be demonstrating for your child if you had it back. Because what we see as young children as quote unquote what love is becomes what we try to emulate when we get older.
That's attachment theory right there.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So, like, Yeah, 100%. And like, I know that my version of quote unquote love is a lot broken. I came from a broken family. I didn't see warmth and love and how people should be treated, and kind of stumbled my way through. Right. But for my daughter, it was so much easier for me to want better for her to see through the relationship her mom has, how a man should treat a woman, and what she should look for. Because if she saw the relationship I had with her father, it
wasn't good.
I want so much better for her. So that's something I think a lot of us don't think of when we have a child. You just want your family to get back together, but think about what you want for your child.
Yeah, I love that. I think most people don't think that. We are self-interested by nature as human beings, but what I have found is usually when you have a child, you learn to become a little bit more selfless as a person and start to consider these things. And sometimes the only way you can have that is through experience. And I mean, it wasn't easy for you to come to that conclusion, but again, I don't want to keep you late for your work call. So if you got to bounce, I get it. We've got more than enough here for most people. She's a busy woman, people.
Which is why I didn't do Anna's homework, and I'm sorry, but obviously it worked out.
I'll talk
Thanks
to
for
you
being-
about that later and give you a scolding. And thanks for coming on. Seriously, this was amazing.
Yeah, no, I hope my story like helps someone. And I can say, like, through the story, I was absolutely crushed. Like, obviously I'm at a happy ending now, so I'm not, but I was crushed, like crying my eyes out, leaning on my battle buddies so heavily. Like, everything was so difficult. It really was. Like, you could not pay me to do the last 2 years over again. You really couldn't. There'd be no price you could put on it. So even though I'm happy now and I got to my quote unquote happy ending, like, don't let that overshadow how difficult it actually was, because it was very, very hard. So people out there who are struggling, I get it. I've been there. As far as the group itself, it can be good in some ways because you're seeing people in earlier stages and later stages. I will say at some point, I think it's good to detach from it, because you don't want to fill your daily feed with all these like sad stories and breakups.
Yeah,
so I'm in the
true.
group, but I don't actively pay attention to it right now.
Yep.
So,
well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. It's good talking to you. But yeah, I do.